Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, if it is indeed the evening. Welcome to another episode of Arcana Unearthed, which, if you have not been following along, this episode we are going to be looking at the Warlock class. I say we, it is just me and and everyone else watching around the world. So do, of course, keep active in the chat. Let us know what you think as we go through it, if you are indeed joining us live, or of course leave things in the comments as well, so that we can interact after we have finished going live, and let us know what you think. I have just realised that for some reason my chat window has disappeared, so I'm just going to have to bring it up on my screen, so forgive me. This normally is just there ready for me to go, but it was not today, so forgive me 1 second. Alright, so the Warlock class is one of my favourite classes. Again, for those that follow along and know us very well, I'm more of a forever DM, to be honest, rather than a player. And I don't actually think I have ever had the opportunity to get around to playing Warlock, though it is very high on my list of characters to play as, just because I like the flavour of it, the idea of making deals, dabbling with the dark arts, potentially, is narratively very appealing to me personally. As somebody who likes villains and villainesque characters, which also is one of the reasons why I am a forever DM, quite frankly. So I'm really intrigued as to some of the changes that they've made, because I feel as though the Warlock as it exists currently as a class in the 2014 Player's Handbook is kind of like the black sheep of D&D classes, in that people will often talk about the Warlock as kind of like, yeah, you don't want to main as a Warlock, you want to multi-class as a Warlock instead. So quite often I find that people tend to, if they are going to play as a Warlock, have it kind of in the multi-class side of things rather than it being their main. Which I think is for a number of reasons. I think one is people think that many forms of the Warlock, although certainly not all, X-Blade, many forms of the Warlock are dramatically, shall we say, underpowered, but equally, the way in which Warlocks access their spells and their abilities feeds into multi-classing very, very well, because there is a difference between spellcasting as a class feature, which every other spellcasting class and even the half-casters get access to, versus pact magic, which is a very special type of spellcasting feature that only the Warlock seems to have access to. And so those two things combined seem to make the Warlock, as I say, this black sheep of the family. But change is afoot as we explore now Player's Handbook playtest packet number 5, which I think we're close to the end of now. And then we'll be going into playtest packet number 6 over the next few weeks, hopefully. I think we've got one more class after the Warlock to explore, and then the rules glossary as well. But we're talking about the Warlock today. So, one of the things that I haven't actually done on all of these other ones so far, actually, is the grouping of the classes. I think they're fairly self-explanatory, which is why I haven't, but it is a new thing from this playtest material for this next iteration. They are grouping the classes together into what they're calling class groups. So you have the warrior class group, the expert class group, the priest class group, and the mage class group. Warlock naturally falls into the mage class group, with its primary abilities being intelligence, wisdom, or charisma, which I think probably, they don't kind of lay it out in those same sorts of terms. Certainly not as easily as that in the player's handbook. First, charisma and constitution, it's saying in the quick build of the 2014 player's handbook, which is interesting because it does look as though they've changed that up a little bit, with constitution not featuring now, and intelligence, wisdom, or charisma. So all of the, shall we say, personality-based ability scores. So let's get into the footnotes. Sorry, I need some more caffeine. Bear with me. Warlock update. So this is now where we get into the headline reading of things, and then we'll get into more detail as we read through. So, as it says, reading verbatim. Here are the main updates in this class, most of which were inspired by the Player's Handbook survey in 2021, which is what all of the classes so far have been saying. So, medium armor is now included in the class's armor training to better support warlocks that walk a melee-oriented path. We'll get into that shortly. Pact Boon has moved from 3rd level to 1st level. It now gives you Eldritch Blast, Hex, and a spell of your choice from a group of 3, all of which are now exclusive to Warlocks. I am liking, by the way, as a design trend, making spells exclusive to classes. There was a little bit too much crossover in the current version of 5th edition for my own personal tastes. So I like the fact that they are really trying to make some class-based spells, exclusive class-based spells, just generally as a design choice. So that's pretty cool. So anyway, more on the Pact Boon. The spell you choose is connected to the spellcasting ability choice you then make. The spells incorporate the previous functionality of the 3 Pact options. Pretty cool. Now, this for me is the biggie. And I'm sure there'll be other things that will come up that will take me by surprise, because I'm pretty much reading this for the first time on this stream, which is, I think, cool, but you may disagree. Anyway, this is the biggie for me, Pact Magic, which has now been replaced by spellcasting. I was just saying a minute ago how Pact Magic was a specific type of spellcasting that only Warlocks had access to, which is why it was so appealing as a multi-class choice. That's now been removed. Apparently this is the most requested change to Warlocks in order for them to be able to use their spells more often. They therefore now cap out at 15 spell slots instead of 4. I'm not quite sure what they mean by that. 15 spell. I'm guessing that's at 20th level. Yes. Spells known. What? I'm not entirely sure. Oh, I see. Yes, because of the. Again, I haven't played a Warlock yet, so the Pact Magic works very, very differently. I think they're more limited in what spells they can use, but they also gain them more frequently. Again, we will come to this later. Eldritch Evocations now caps out at 9 invocations rather than 8. Mystic Arcanum has become an Eldritch invocation option, which is now available as soon as 5th level. Previously, the Warlock waited until 11th level to get it. Contact Patron is a new 11th level feature, allowing a Warlock to contact their patron directly. Ooh. Now that sounds fun. We'll get into the nitty-gritty of that later. The Hexmaster is a new 18th level feature. Eldritch Master has been removed since it was based on Pact Magic. And Epic Boon, which is the same as everything else, a new 20th level feature that increases an ability score, raises that score's maximum to 30, and gives an Epic Boon feat. Now, again, if you haven't been following along the recent episodes, I do need to call out the fact that we are actually going to be seeing this Epic Boon thing changed a little bit from playtest packet number 6, because they are they were toying with the idea of putting the Keystone ability at 18th level and then making Epic Boon 20th level at this playtest packet, but playtest packet 6, so I'm hearing, is that they have now moved Epic Boons again to a post 20th level thing, which, I don't know, I kind of like the Epic Boon at 20th level, but apparently I'm in the minority there. I kind of like that as a stepping stone into epic tier play. But then that being said, I haven't played a 20th level campaign. I haven't run a 20th level campaign. I haven't, therefore, even gone into an epic level campaign post 20th level. And I don't think many people have. So maybe that seems like a moot point. I don't know. I like the idea of it, but practically, will it ever be useful? I don't know. So, those are the kind of headlines for this. But let's go through in detail, because I think the Warlock, out of all of the classes, is probably going to be the one that has the biggest changes. So, hit dice remain at 1d8 per Warlock level. Hit points at first level are 8 plus your Constitution modifier, which remains the same. Hit points at higher level, 1d8 or 5 plus your Constitution modifier, which remains the same. Armor proficiencies. It was previously light armor, now is medium armor. Which I think is a good thing, maybe. I guess when you think about like the Hexblade Warlock and things like that, that may be one of the weaknesses of a Hexblade Warlock if you're going into melee kind of oriented paths as it described in the Warlock Updates design notes. I kind of like the idea of having an arcane spellcaster that is front and center, which the Warlock, I suppose, fills that gap in the market, whereas sorcerers and wizards are a little bit more squishy. In fact, what is the hit dice of a wizard again? I think it's 1d6, is it? Yeah, it is 1d6. So with it being 1d8 and plus having better armor class, it kind of makes the Warlock quite literally a war caster in many respects. So that's the armor proficiencies. Weapon proficiencies are simple weapons still, which again is quite a few weapons available there. No tools proficiencies remains the same. Saving throws remain wisdom and charisma, and then you get to choose 2 skills from Arcana, Deception, History, Intimidation, Investigation, Nature, Religion. Arcana, Deception, History, Intimidation, Investigation. Yep, that remains the same. Okay, cool. Then we look at starting equipment. This is something that they have been changing up, I've been noticing as we've been going through. So you can either choose the following equipment or choose 100 gold pieces and buy whatever equipment you like instead. So this will have changed because they're basically now limiting the choices that you have to make. So essentially it is just one set of starting gear or buy your own, as opposed to you get to pick this one or this one, plus this one or this one, plus this one or this one. Just kind of simplifying the character creation process, I guess, is kind of the idea. So the starting equipment it suggests is an arcane focus, specifically an orb, a book on occult lore, 2 daggers, leather armor, a scholar's pack, a sickle, and 15 gold pieces. Nothing wrong with that. It fits in. I do like the fact that they are specifying these arcane focuses now as well. It just adds to the flavor. I like a warlock holding an orb. That's pretty cool. Anyway, so those are kind of like the sort of general proficiencies and stuff and features and equipment and stuff. Now we get into the real stuff, the actual abilities and things. So this has been changed up a fair bit, actually, from the looks of things. They've really shaken this up because we started out on the 2014 Player's Handbook with Otherworldly Patron, where you pick your patron of choice. Whereas now we're starting with the Pact Boon. You have formed a pact with an otherworldly entity that has bestowed magical powers upon you. You always have the Eldritch Blast and Hex spells prepared, and you choose one of the following boons. Pact of the Blade, Pact of the Chain, or Pact of the Tome, each of which is detailed below. You determine the identity of the entity and choose its plane of existence, such as the Feywild, the Shadowfell, or an outer plane. Each boon gives you a choice for the spellcasting ability used by your spellcasting feature, and it gives you a pact spell that you always have prepared. Right. I don't know how I feel about this. I get the idea of kind of changing things around so that you're not picking your subclass at first level, because I'm pretty sure that's what you picked as your subclass. God, it's been so long since I've really dealt with a warlock. But yes, you do. You pick your subclass essentially at first level in the 2014 Player's Handbook. And I know that they're trying to unify this so that everybody's at third, but I don't think this is the right move. I don't. It kind of feels like they're trying to fit a square peg into a round hole by kind of saying, yeah, you pick the identity of your patron and stuff, but they've also not like specified, and like it just, to me, that takes away a lot of the flavor, because part of the flavor of the warlock is like, who is my patron? I kind of know a vague idea of kind of at least their origin, but I don't know who they are, and it kind of, this feels bland. It feels like, you know, a McDonald's burger, which I love a McDonald's burger, by the way, versus like a gourmet level burger, right? Or, for those of you in London, an honest burger, or a Byron burger. Honest is better. But it's like, it's gourmet versus like mass-produced, and this feels mass-produced by comparison. It just lacks flavour for me. So anyway, so the choices are the Pact of the Blade, in which case your spellcasting ability is Wisdom or Charisma. In your spell will be the Pact Weapon, which... Pact Weapon... tracing arcane sigils in the air, you conjure a simple or martial weapon of your choice in your outstretched hand, or you create a bond with a magical weapon you touch. The weapon you conjure or touch must lack the heavy property, and the spell fails if you touch a magic item that is attuned to someone else. For the duration, the weapon grants you the following benefits. When you attack with the weapon, you can use spellcasting ability for the modifier instead of strength or dex. You have proficiency with the weapon, and if the weapon has a thrown property, the weapon returns to your hand immediately after hitting or missing a target. The spell ends early if you cast a spell again or die. When it ends, a conjured weapon disappears, or your bond with a magic weapon stops. And also there's some extra stuff for when you level up. But again, that's in our spell. We've covered all the spells. That was just a quick rundown just to remind you. So essentially, you're summoning a weapon into your hand. Which is, I mean, it's cool. I like it as a flavour thing. Generally, I don't necessarily know if, again, that warrants just nerfing the flavour at all. Anyway, the Pact of the Chain, you choose spellcasting ability, intelligence, or charisma, and your pact spell would be Pact Familiar, which is essentially a Warlock's version of a Familiar, which actually has been greatly improved compared to the Find Familiar spell that you would normally have as a wizard. And then we have the Pact of the Tome, Intelligence or Wisdom as your spellcasting ability, and your pact spell was the Book of Shadows, which I can't actually remember what that did. Let me have a look. The Book of Shadows, which sounds very cool just by its name alone. The Book of Shadows. Stitching together strands of shadow, you conjure forth a book in your hand. The book contains eldritch magic that only you can access, granting you the following benefits. Cantrips and rituals. When the book appears, choose 2 cantrips and choose 2 first level spells that have the ritual tag. The spells can be from the Arcane, Divine, and Primal spell list, and they must be spells you don't already have prepared. While the book is on your person, you have the chosen spells prepared. And you can use the book as a spell casting focus. The book disappears if you cast this spell again or die. So basically, it adds 4 extra spells to your list, which you get to change up every time you cast that spell, which I actually think is pretty cool as a concept. I like that a lot. Yeah, I really like that a lot. I think if I was going to choose one, I think Pact of the Tome would certainly be tempting. Pact of the Blade, though, I'm not a fan of Pact of the Chain. That's kind of the wah one for me. So, excuse me. Now we move on to this big thing that I was talking about, the spell casting. I don't know what's wrong with my brain today. My goodness. So, the spell casting side of things. Well, as I say, it was previously Pact Magic. Normally I do like a comparison, but things have changed so much I don't even know if it's worth doing a comparison. But Pact Magic, let's go through, for those that have not played a Warlock, exactly what Pact Magic was in the 2014 Player's Handbook. So, Pact Magic. Your arcane research and the magic bestowed upon you by your patron have given you the ability, facility, with spells. Normal spellcasting rules apply. Cantrips. You know 2 cantrips of your choice from the Warlock spell list. You learn additional Warlock cantrips of your choice at higher levels as shown on the cantrips known column of the Warlock table, which caps out at 4 at 20th level. Spell slots. The Warlock table shows how many spell slots you have to cast your Warlock spells from 1st through 5th level. The table also shows what the level of those slots is. Okay. All of your spell slots are the same level. To cast one of your Warlock spells of 1st level or higher, you must expend a slot. You regain all expended spell slots when you finish a short or long rest. For example, when you are 5th level, you have 2 3rd level spell slots. To cast the 1st level spell, Witch Bolt, you must spend one of those slots and you cast it at 3rd level. So what Pact Magic does is it kind of gives you access to powerful spells, but it limits the flexibility around which you can cast them. Which is where they're slightly different from a sorcerer, because a sorcerer still has that sort of level of flexibility because the power is innate. Pact Magic is much less nuanced, shall we say. But equally, you regain your spell slots far more often because of the short rest mechanic. That's how it works in 2014 anyway. There's still a bit more. So spells known of 1st level and higher. At 1st level, you know 2 1st level spells of your choice from the Warlock spell list. The spells known column of the Warlock table shows when you learn more Warlock spells of your choice of 1st level and higher. A spell you choose must be of a level no higher than what is shown on the table's slot level column for your level. When you reach 6th level, for example, you learn a new Warlock spell, which can be 1st, 2nd, or 3rd level. Additionally, when you gain a level in this class, you can choose one of the Warlock spells you know and replace it with another spell from the Warlock spell list, which also must be of a level for which you have spell slots. So, again, that kind of retraining of spells as an optional extra. But you only get to do that once when you level up. Spellcasting ability. Charisma is your spellcasting ability for your Warlock spells, so you use Charisma whenever a spell refers to your spellcasting ability. In addition, you use the Charisma modifier for setting the saving throw DC for a Warlock spell you cast when making an attack roll with one. So that's also very different, of course, because the ability modifier, the ability for your spellcasting, is decided by whichever pact you choose. So, how does this compare? So, spellcasting, not Pact Magic, in the new version. Delving into eldritch secrets, you have learned how to cast spells. The information below details how you use those rules as a warlock. The spellcasting rules, that is, for the player's handbook. I slightly skipped over a bit there. So, cantrips. You know 2 cantrips of your choice from the arcane spell list. Rather than choosing, you may start with Chill Touch and Prestidigitation. A common theme with spellcasting classes, they're making some suggestions, but you can choose whichever one you like. Whenever you gain a Warlock level, you can replace one of your cantrips with another arcane cantrip of your choice. Interesting. Whenever you can replace one of your cantrips. Interesting. Okay. So, retraining of cantrips now, too. That's cool. When you reach 4th and 10th level in this class, you learn another arcane cantrip of your choice, as shown on the cantrips column of the Warlock table. Okay, nice and simple. I like the retraining of the cantrips. That's pretty cool. Spell slots. The Warlock table shows how many spell slots you have to cast your spells of 1st level and higher. To cast one of these spells, you must expend a slot of the spell's level or higher. You regain all expended spell slots when you finish a long rest. Now, this is a big change for the Warlock, because they're removing that inflexibility of the spell casting and making it much more in line with like wizards and sorcerers, which I think I like. I understand the I'm of two minds, because obviously for those that watch the sorcerer's video are saying how I don't want them to change too much about the sorcerer, because I don't want them to get rid of the flavour that separates the wizard and the sorcerer and that makes the wizard more powerful than a sorcerer in some ways, and vice versa. Luckily, they didn't change anything so much as just simply rewording it and utilising different terminology for it. This one, however, kind of falls in the direction of the concerns that I had of what they were going to do with the sorcerer, but it's for the warlock instead. So I'm really mixed, because I like those. I like limitations like that. I can understand, though, from a player's perspective, how the warlock can be frustrating. And again, it comes back to that thing that I was talking about at the beginning, about the warlock being somewhat of a black sheep of the classes, in that it's kind of seen as you're better off multi-classing in it rather than necessarily just simply being it as your main class. And this kind of alleviates some of those things to make the warlock more enticing. So I have mixed opinions of it, to be honest. You regain all expended spell slots when you finish a long rest, and that was obviously something that they did talk about. You now oh no, they didn't actually mention this particular aspect about the spell casting. So you get more spell slots and more flexibility with those spell slots, but instead now you're actually getting them only at a long rest, not at a short rest, which from an action economy perspective probably makes a lot of sense. Prepared spells of 1st level. You prepare the list of spells on first level and higher that are available to you to cast with this feature. You start choose 2 1st level spells from the arcane spell list. Rather than choosing, you may start with Charm Person and Witch Bolt. Again, suggestions. The number of spells on your list increases as you gain Warlock levels, as shown in the Prepared Spells column of the Warlock table. Whenever that number increases, choose additional spells from the arcane spell list until the number of spells on your list matches the number on the table. The chosen spells must be of a level for which you have spell slots. For example, if you're a 5th level warlock, your list of prepared spells can include 6 arcane spells of 1st or 2nd level in any combination. If another warlock feature gives spells that you always have prepared, those spells don't count against the number of spells on the list prepared with the spellcasting feature, but those spells otherwise follow the rules in this feature. Again, this is really clumsily written. I don't know why they've written these things like this, with this kind of it doesn't count towards the numbers, and it's just, there's got to be, surely, a better way for them to do that and to make it nice and clear and simple. But there we are. So, changing your prepared spells. This could be interesting. Whenever you gain a Warlock level, you can replace one spell on your list with another arcane spell for which you have spell slots. Huh. So it's just that retraining. So it's basically kind of mimicking the Sorcerer a little bit, which I kind of like, actually. It kind of makes sense to do it that way. But the sorcerer, I think, increases... Yes, the sorcerer increases their spell levels and the number of spells they have prepared more quickly. Yes. So the warlock is kind of like the sorcerer, but more limited than the sorcerer. So it's kind of like the weakest of the arcane in terms of spell power, but I think some of its features might alleviate that somewhat. Again, I don't know. I don't know whether... I don't know. It makes sense, though, from a mechanical design perspective. It makes more sense than the pact magic stuff that they've done, I guess. Spellcasting focus. You can use an arcane focus as a spellcasting focus for the spells you cast with your warlock features. So now, second level, Eldritch Invocations. So this is where the warlock gets interesting with the Eldritch Invocations, because just to compare, Eldritch Invocations, as it reads in the Player's Handbook 2014, in your study of occult lore, you have unearthed Eldritch Invocations, fragments of forbidden knowledge that imbue you with an abiding magical ability. A level prerequisite refers to your level in this class. At second level, you gain 2 Eldritch Invocations of your choice. Your invocation options are detailed at the end of the class description. When you gain certain Warlock levels, you gain additional invocations of your choice, as shown in the Invocations Known column of the Warlock table. Additionally, when you gain a level in this class, you choose one of the invocations you know and replace it with another invocation that you could learn at that level. And I guess this is where this will balance out a little bit when you compare it with the Sorcerer, I suppose. And I like the idea of the Eldritch Invocations, this idea of this forbidden magic. It's the flavour of that is very fun, and has been, and it remains so. So apparently, this is now going to cap out at 9 invocations rather than 8 is the main change. Let me just quickly skim through this. You can't pick the same invocation more than once unless an invocation's description says otherwise. If an invocation has a prerequisite, you must meet it to learn the invocation, and you can learn the invocation at the same time that you meet its prerequisite. For example, if an invocation requires you to be a 5th level warlock, you can select the invocation when you reach 5th level in this class. Not sure why that needs specifically calling out, but okay. When you gain certain Warlock levels, you gain more invocations of your choice, as shown in the invocations column of the Warlock table. Additionally, when you gain a Warlock level, you can choose one of the invocations you know and replace it with another invocation for which you qualify. Or, if the invocation, such as Mystic Arcanum, involved a choice, you can replace the invocation with itself, but make a different choice. I like that they've called that out. That makes sense. So we'll get to the invocations later. They've not called out any specific invocations that... Oh, it has its own headlines of updates. So we'll come to that later. So in terms of the actual subclass features and things and the additional features past 3rd level, we'll probably speed through these pretty quick because most of these are linked to either a subclass feature, a feat, or an invocation. So we'll pass through these pretty quick. But first of all, when we hit 3rd level, now is where we're picking the Warlock subclass, which is where you then start looking at that thing I was complaining about the flavour of the otherworldly patron and picking your otherworldly patron. This is it now. So basically, until... You see, this is where it's weird. Because basically, when you're at 1st level... You've chosen a patron, but you've not chosen a patron. It doesn't make any sense to me, this. So at 1st level, when you do your pact boon, you have formed a pact with an otherworldly entity, right? You determine the identity of the entity and choose its plane of existence. But you don't actually... You then pick the type of patron as your subclass choice later, but you've already made that decision at 1st level, but I don't think you're going to be locked into it. Let's read what it says. So you gain the Feed Patron subclass, which is the one featured in this Arcana Unearthed, or another Warlock subclass of your choice, which is not featured yet. These will come out later. The Fiend Patron subclass is detailed after the Warlock's class description, and other subclasses will appear in future Unearthed Arcana articles. A subclass is a specialization that grants you special abilities at certain Warlock levels. For the rest of your career, you gain each of your subclasses' features that are of your Warlock level and lower. This class's description tells you the levels when your subclass provides features. I'm sure we'll get to the subclass later. I just don't really understand how this is going to work flavor-wise in conjunction with the Pact Boon, because frankly, if I've already decided on the subclass, on the patron, then surely I've already decided my subclass at first level. It just doesn't make any sense to me, but we'll get to that. So, at 4th level, you then gain a feat. At 5th level, you gain an Eldritch Invocation. At 6th level, you gain a subclass feature. At 7th level, you gain an Eldritch Invocation. At 8th level, you gain a feat. At 9th level, an Eldritch Invocation. At 10th level, a subclass feature. At 11th level, new feature, Contact Patron. Now this I'm excited about. In the past, you have usually contacted your patron through intermediaries. Now, you can communicate directly. You always have the Contact Other Plane spell prepared. With this feature, you can cast the spell without expending a spell slot to contact your patron, and you automatically succeed on the spell's saving throw. Once you cast the spell with this feature, you can't do so again until you finish a long rest. So, Contact Other Plane spell. Let's see, where are you? So this is always prepared, and you can cast it for free. Oh, interestingly, Contact Other Plane spell is not in here, which means it hasn't had an update. Let me just whip out my player's handbook. Contact Other Plane, so it hasn't been updated. Contact Other Plane. To me, it just feels like a role-playing spell that doesn't necessarily result in anything in particular. Contact Other Plane. You mentally contact a demigod, a spirit of a long-dead sage, or some other mysterious entity from another plane. Contacting this extraplanar intelligence can strain or even break your mind. You cast this spell, making a DC 15 saving throw, which you will automatically succeed with this new Warlock class feature. On a failure, you take psychic damage, which doesn't really matter, and are insane until you finish a long rest. Again, that won't really matter in this particular iteration, because you are going to automatically pass. On a successful save, this is where we get to it, you can ask the entity up to 5 questions. I'm thinking of the D&T movie right now. Is this thing on? Yes. Oh, okay. And that's the first question. Anyway, you must ask your question before the spell ends. The DM answers each question with one word, such as yes, no, maybe, never, irrelevant, or unclear. If the entity doesn't know the answer to the question... Oh, unclear. Open brackets. If the entity doesn't know the answer to the question. Close brackets. If a one-word answer would be misleading, the DM might instead offer a short phrase as an answer. Okay. Pretty cool. Automatic. So it's a free direction essentially from your patron. That's kind of nice. I like that. Makes a lot of sense from a flavor perspective. And then we get back into the rather boring list, frankly. 11th level, Eldritch Invocation. 12th level, Feat. 13th level, Eldritch Invocation. 14th level, subclass feature. 15th level, Eldritch Invocation. 16th level, Feat. 18th level, Hexmaster. Hexmaster is a new 18th level feature. You have mastered the dread application of hexes, allowing you to cast the hex spell without expending a spell slot. Cool. Simple. Fine. 19th level, Feat. 20th level, Epic Boon. You gain the Epic Boon of the Night Spirit, or another Epic Boon feat of your choice. The Epic Boon of the Night feat was... What was that? The epic boon of the Night Spirit. That's it. Increase your dexterity, intelligence, wisdom, or charisma modifier by 1 to a maximum of 30. Merge with shadows. While entirely within dim light or darkness, you can give yourself the invisible condition as a magic action. The condition ends on you immediately after you take an action, a bonus action, or a reaction. So kind of like the Gloomstalker ranger, but a little bit more powerful because it's invisible to everyone, not just those with dark vision. Shadowy form. While entirely within dim light or darkness, you have resistance to all damage except force, psychic, and radiant. Very cool. So that's the class progression of the Warlock. Really simple feats and eldritch evocation or invocations. Keep saying evocations. Galore, basically. So what we're looking at now is the invocations themselves. So this is where we're really going to get into comparison territory. There are a lot of these, and they may take us a little bit of time to get through. What time are we on? God, I've got a subclass to read too. This is going to be a long one, folks. So the Eldritch Invocation updates. Beguiling Influence has been replaced by lessons of the first ones, which can be used to take the skilled feat or another eligible feat. Bewitching Whispers has been replaced by Mystic Arcanum. Book of Ancient Secrets has been absorbed by the new Book of Shadows spell and the Warlock's new spellcasting feature. So far, those three, gone. Change of Carcery has been replaced by Mystic Arcanum. Another one, gone. Dreadful Word has been replaced by Mystic Arcanum. Another one, gone. Eyes of the Runekeeper now clarifies that it doesn't decode secret messages. Favour of the Chainmaster is a new invocation that replaces Pact of the Chain. Gone. Gaze of Two Minds is now usable as a bonus action rather than an action. It no longer applies the blinded and deafened condition to you, and it allows you to cast spells from your space or the other creature's space. Finally, it now requires 5th level. A lot of changes to that one. Gift of the Protectors has been imported from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. Hexer is a new invocation that replaces Hex. Lessons of the first ones is a new invocation that allows the Warlock to dabble in different areas. Life Drinker now requires 9th level rather than 12th, and it deals 1d6 extra damage and it heals you. So they've lowered the requirements, but also souped up the power, which is a rare change, actually. Minions of Chaos has been replaced by Mystic Arcanum. Gone. Mire of the Mind has been replaced by Mystic Arcanum. Gone. Mystic Arcanum is now an Eldritch invocation that is available starting at 5th level rather than 11th level. Repelling Blast now works on creatures that are large or smaller. Sculptor of Flesh has been replaced by, you guessed it, Mystic Arcanum. Gone. Sign of Ill Omen has been replaced by Mystic Arcanum. Gone. Thief of Five Fates has been replaced by Mystic Arcanum. Gone. Thirsting Blade has been absorbed by the new Pact Weapons spell. Voice of the Chainmaster has been absorbed by the new Pact Familiar spell. And Witch Sight now gives you True Sight. What Mystic Arcanum, goodness me, has just eaten up pretty much all of the invocations that were there. So let's do some comparisons, shall we? Eldritch invocations, your invocation options. Okay, bear with me, folks. There's a lot of them here. Agonizing Blast, as it read previously. You need the Eldritch Blast cantrip. When you cast Eldritch Blast, add your charisma modifier to the damage it deals on a hit. It's pretty much the same, except you don't need Eldritch Blast anymore as a prerequisite. And it's not necessarily your charisma modifier. It will be whatever your spellcasting ability modifier is. Armor of Shadows. It read before, no prerequisite. You can cast Mage Armor on yourself at will without expending a spell slot or material components, which is exactly the same. That hasn't changed. Ascendant Step, a prerequisite of 9th level previously. That remains the same. You can cast Levitate on yourself at will without expending a spell slot or material components. That remains the same also. Beast Speech no prerequisite, that remains the same. You can cast Speak with Animals at will without expending a spell slot, also remains the same. Devil's Sight. Oh, hang on. So now we're skipping loads, because then there were loads that have been replaced, mostly by Mystic Arcana, because we've lost Beguiling Influence, Bewitching Whispers, and Book of Ancient Secrets, and the Chains of Carcery. So then we move to Devil's Sight, which previously you can see normally in darkness, both magical and non-magical, to a distance of 120 feet. You can see normally in darkness, both magically and non-magical, to a distance of 120 feet, so that remains the same. There is no prerequisite. Dreadful Word, that one's gone. So we then move to Eldritch Sight. No prerequisite previously, that remains the same. You can cast Detect Magic without expending a spell slot, that remains the same. Eldritch Spear. Now, it used to have a prerequisite of Eldritch Blast as a cantrip, but that's no longer the case. So there's no prerequisite anymore. When you cast Eldritch Blast... oh, hang on. Which one am I looking at? Eldritch Spear. When you cast Eldritch Blast, its range is 300 feet. That remains the same. Then we have Eyes of the Runekeeper. Now, this has changed a bit. Eyes of the Runekeepers clarified a few things. Essentially, what it said before was simply, you can read all writing. No prerequisite required. Eyes of the Runekeeper now, still no prerequisite required, but they've added a couple of sentences. You can read all writing. This ability doesn't decode secret messages in a text. You read the surface meaning and must rely on other capabilities to decode something. A good clarification, I think. Then we lose Fiendish Vigor. Or at least that's not written in here. And they've not mentioned it in the notes either. Oh no, Fiendish Vigor hasn't gone. But next up is Favour of the Chainmaster alphabetically, which is a new one. That enhances the Pact of the Chain. So, the prerequisites, therefore, for this one are 9th level of Warlock or higher, and the Pact of the Chain feature. Okay? So, your bond with the familiar summoned by your Pact Familiar spell grows more powerful. Whenever the familiar hits with its Eldritch Strike, the target experiences the following effect associated with the familiar's creature type. Now, I've not covered the Pact Familiar spell in this video because it's quite a long spell and could take some time. So just do go back to the episode that we looked at the spells from this playtest packet, because it's pretty cool. I like what they've done with it. They've made familiars a little bit more fun and a bit more interesting. So Eldritch Strike. The target experiences the following effect associated with the creature's type. So if it's an aberration, your Pact Familiar, then they get the effect of the Slowing Slime. The target's speed is reduced by 15 feet until the end of your next turn, and during that time it can't take the dash or disengage action. That's pretty neat. Actually, from a controlling the battlefield perspective, that's pretty neat. If your Pact Familiar is a Celestial, Guiding Light. The next attack roll against the target before the end of your next turn has advantage, and if the target has the invisible condition, that condition is suppressed for the duration. So it's kind of like a guiding bolt effect to your Eldritch Blast, which is cool. If your Pact Familiar is a dragon, then Draconic Might kicks in. If the target is medium or smaller, it has the prone condition. I'm guessing the idea, flavour-wise, is that they are bowing down to the might of the dragon? I guess. That could do with some clarification, because I don't really understand why they'd be prone. And as a DM, I kind of want to know why they would be prone. If your Pact Familiar is a Fae, then Beguiling Sting kicks in. The target has the charmed condition until the end of your next turn, and perceives both you and the familiar as the charmer. Okay? If your Pact Familiar is a fiend, then Unearthly Toxin kicks in. The target has the poison condition until the end of your next turn. And if your Pact Familiar is undead, then Whispers of the Grave kicks in.
The target has the frightened condition until the end of your next turn. You choose whether the target is frightened of you or the familiar. Cool. Again, from a controlling the battlefield perspective, pretty nice. I kind of like this as an invocation. It kind of makes the Pat Familiar even more interesting and valuable to the Warlock. So, yep, pretty happy with that. I think that's a good option. No complaints from me. So then we come to Fiendish Vigor, which had no prerequisite before, doesn't have one now. It essentially remains the same, slight rewording. You can cast False Life on yourself at will as a first level spell without expending a spell slot or material components. You can cast False Life on yourself without expending a spell slot or using material components. Oh yes, because it was specified that it was as a first level spell, which I don't really understand why, because I guess it's to do with the pact magic and the inflexibility. So they've just removed that reference to the first level spell, but otherwise it's essentially the same. Gaze of Two Minds. Now this didn't have prerequisites before, but now it does. You have to be a 5th level warlock or higher. And I think there's good reason for that. And that's because they've made it more powerful, because it now can be used as a bonus action. So let's read the two as they were first, and then as it comes in. So Gaze of Two Minds, 2014. You can use your action to touch a willing humanoid and perceive through its senses until the end of your next turn. As long as the creature is on the same plane of existence as you, you can use your action or on subsequent turns to maintain this connection, extending the duration until the end of your next turn. While perceiving through the other creature's senses, you benefit from any special senses possessed by that creature, and you are blinded and deafened to your own surroundings. So it's kind of the same as a wizard seeing through the eyes of its familiar, but it can be any willing humanoid. So it could be another player, for example. Now it reads thus. You can use a bonus action to touch a willing humanoid and perceive through its senses until the end of your next turn. As long as the creature is on the same plane of existence as you, you can use a bonus action on subsequent turns to maintain this connection, extending the duration until the end of your next turn. While perceiving through the other creature's senses, you benefit from any special senses possessed by that creature, and you can cast spells as if you were in your space or the other creature's space. Now, there's something interesting at play here, which I have been curious about, and I think we'll find out a little bit more of this when the Dungeon Master's Guide is released. Because I don't understand why this would need to be moved to a bonus action. Because I can't really see, because you have to touch a willing creature, I don't really understand what use this would have in combat. So I don't understand the need for it to be specified as a bonus action, because it's unlikely, in my view, to be used in combat. Because you're putting yourself at risk, because I suppose other than about putting yourself at range, but then you have to start touching them. So it's not like, it's like I touch you and then I suppose they could run off on their next turn if the initiative order's right. Maybe. But I think the circumstances are so rare in which this would be useful that I don't understand the need for it to be a bonus action, quite frankly. So there's something interesting at play, which I'm interested to find out what their plans are. But there's part of me that's thinking that there's a design choice coming up in which they are going to clarify the rules around exploration and having an action economy for the exploration pillar. Such as, well, you have your turn as you're going through the dungeon, and this would be a bonus action that you would do during that exploration phase. I've got a feeling that might be where they're going. I hope that's where they're going, because I think 5th edition really needs a lot of clarity and a lot of structure around the exploration pillar. because a lot of the ways in which dungeons and things are supposed to be explored in Dungeons and Dragons has kind of been assumed as common knowledge, in 5th edition, and it's never really explicitly stated how a dungeon runs and how that phase of play and that gameplay loop works. So people just start doing like the almost like a flowchart of rooms, which is not necessarily, I don't think, as the game is intended to run and to flow. So it'll be interesting to know if this does move into a phase that is a design phase, shall we say, in which they're focusing more on that. But I don't know for sure. There's kind of been little hints that have been dropped that might be the case, but we'll find out. Anyway, so that's cool. The Gift of the Protectors, which is not a new one, but it's been imported from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, so if you're not familiar with it, prerequisites are a 9th level Warlock or higher, and the Pact of the Tome feature must be the one that you chose. A new page appears in your Book of Shadows when you conjure it. With your permission, a creature can use its action to write its name on that page, which can contain a number of names equal to your proficiency bonus. When any creature whose name is on the page is reduced to 0 hit points, but not killed outright, the creature magically drops to 1 hit point instead. Once this magic is triggered, no creature can benefit from it until you finish a long rest. As a magic action, you can erase a name on the page by touching it. Interesting. Then magic actions is another one of those things that I am wondering whether or not that is a hint about this exploration pillar. Because I don't know why you'd want to spend your action in combat to erase a name on a page. That does not, to me, make sense tactically. So that's another thing. But yes, this is pretty cool. I like it. That's a cool invocation. I wasn't aware of it from Tasha's. I've not really delved into Tasha's properly, I must confess. Again, forever DM. So I just kind of deal with spells and things as they come up in play from whatever my players choose. So I wasn't familiar with that spell. It's pretty cool. Hexer, which is a new one that enhances the Hex spell. When you cast Hex, its range is 600 feet, and you have advantage on any Constitution saving throw you make to maintain your concentration on the spell. No prerequisites required. Cool. Lessons of the first one, also a new one. Prerequisite none. You have received knowledge from an elder entity of the multiverse, allowing you to gain 1 feat of your choice, such as skilled, that is available to first level characters and that lacks prerequisites. Nice. Very cool. Life Drinker now requires 9th level rather than 12th and deals 1d6 extra damage. So let's read as it was before. So Life Drinker in 2014, 12th level, Pact of the Blade feature. When you hit a creature with your packed weapon, the creature takes extra necrotic damage equal to your charisma modifier to a minimum of 1. Oh, okay, yes, there's Life Drinker swords and things. And this is kind of essentially doing the same. So when you hit a creature with the weapon of your packed weapon spell, the creature takes an extra 1d6 necrotic damage. In addition, the first time you deal necrotic damage with this invocation on each of your turns, you regain a number of hit points equal to the necrotic damage dealt. Interesting. So that's going to heal you now. Which makes sense with the Life Drinker name. I'm kind of surprised that wasn't there before, to be perfectly honest with you. But okay. You regain. In addition, the first time you deal necrotic damage with this invocation on each of your turns. Oh, so every turn, the first time that you deal the necrotic damage. Right. Got it. Okay. So, the Mask of Many Faces. I don't think this one's changed. Prerequisites, none. Yep, that's the same. You can cast Disguise Self without expending a spell slot. That's exactly the same. Master of Myriad Forms. Prerequisite, 15th level. remains the same. Previously said you can cast Alter Self at will without expending a spell slot. That has remained the same. Mighty Visions. No. Misty Visions. No prerequisite, remains the same. You can cast Silent Image at will without expending spell slots or material components. That remains the same too. Now here we are, Mystic Arcanum, which is a new one, and to seem to have replaced almost all of the invocations that exist previously, so it seemed. Your explorations, so this requires 5th level Warlock or higher. Your explorations of the arcane have unlocked magic within you. Choose one spell from the arcane spell list that has a level for which you qualify, as shown on the Mystic Arcanum table. Look for your Warlock level on the table to see the maximum level that the spell can have. That seems a bit clunky. Okay. You can cast the chosen spell once without expending a spell slot, and you must finish a long rest before you can do so again. Repeatable. You can take this invocation more than once. Each time you do so, the spell you gain must be a different level from any other spell you've chosen for this invocation. Choose one spell. Okay. So basically you get a free spell. That's it? I was kind of expecting something revolutionary here. Okay. Fine. Considering how many things that has replaced, that's a bit bland. Boring. I think they could do better than that if they're going to get rid of so many other classes, I guess. Invocations, I mean. Anyway, not a fan of that. Really not a fan. I actually found that incredibly disappointing. One with shadows. Prerequisite, 5th level or higher. When you are in an area of dim light or darkness, you can use your action to have the invisible condition until you move or take an action, a bonus action, or reaction. Which I think is the same. Yes. Action, bonus action, or reaction. Oh, bonus action wasn't included previously, but otherwise it is essentially the same. Otherworldly Leap. Previously, a 9th level prerequisite, cast Jump on yourself at will. Remains the same, without expending spell slots or material components, that is. Repelling Blast. Required the Eldritch Blast cantrip. It doesn't now. Whenever you hit a creature that is large or smaller with Eldritch Blast, you can push that creature horizontally up to 10 feet straight away from you. It's essentially written the same way. It's essentially the same, rather, but it was written slightly differently before. Push a creature up to 10 feet away from you in a straight line. So I guess it doesn't need to be in a straight line anymore. Push that creature horizontally. That's interesting. Why horizontally? I don't even know how that works on the grid. Does that mean it's prone? I think that needs some clarifying. I think how it was worded before, being in a straight line, actually makes far more sense. Not sure what they were thinking with that wording. Visions of Distant Realms, prerequisite, 15th level, remains the same. You can cast Arcane Eye without expending a spell slot, which remains the same. Whispers of the Grave, you can cast Speak Dead without expending a spell slot, prerequisite, 9th level, remains the same. Witch Sight, prerequisite, 15th level, that's the same. You have True Sight with a range of 30 feet. Now before, it's read as thus. You can see the true form of any shape changer or creature concealed by illusion or transmutation magic while the creature is within 30 feet of you and within line of sight. Now I've simply simplified this to be True Sight, which normally in 5th edition, if I'm right in this, has only been exclusively to monsters up until now. So the fact that they have transferred this over into the Warlock is pretty cool. So, phew, that's all of the invocations. That took me a while to get through. I do want to look at the subclass, though, which is only a few features. I really don't understand how this is going to link in. I have a feeling. I remember when this playtest packet came out, there was a lot of pushback on the Warlock side of things. I think I'm starting to understand why, because I don't think I'm a fan of it, if I'm perfectly honest with you. But let's see, because I don't see how it's going to work. Anyway, not necessarily from a mechanical perspective, because I think mechanically it makes sense. I just don't know if it works flavor wise, but I've said that many times on this stream already. So the Fiend Patron is the Warlock subclass that we're looking at, which kind of links into the Fiend at first level in the 2014 Warlock. So some design notes for the Fiend Patron updates. Patron spells replaces the expanded spell list. Rather than merely expanding your spell list, Patron spells give you certain spells that you always have prepared, and once per long rest you can cast one of those spells without a spell slot. The list of spells has also been updated. So, let's look at this then. So, Patron spells. The magic of your otherworldly patron grants you the following benefits. You always have certain spells ready when you reach a Warlock level, specified in the Fiend spell table. You thereafter always have the listed spell prepared. Free casting, you can cast one of your prepared spells from this feature without expending a spell slot, and you must finish a long rest before you use the benefit again. So that's new. So really before it just gave you access to new spells. So first of all, the first lot that you get, which is now at 3rd level rather than 1st, is Burning Hands and Commands. That remains the same. Then at 5th level, the next sort of tier would have been Blindness, Deafness, and Scorching Ray. Instead, it's now going to be Scorching Ray and Suggestion for the Fiend. Then the next tier, which was 3rd level spells, now it's coming in at 9th level, would have been Fireball and Stinking Cloud. Now it's Fear and Stinking Cloud. Then the next tier up, which is now coming in at 13th level, would have been previously Fire Shield and Wall of Fire. Now it's Blight and Wall of Fire. And then the final tier, which comes in at 17th level, would have been Flame Strike and Hallow. Now it's Flame Strike and Insect Plague. So pretty much there, on the updates of the table, they've swapped out only one of the 2 spells. Cool. Fine. It's simple, I guess. The always prepared thing. Which seems to be a running theme too. They're liking this. Oh yeah, you always have that thing prepared. Yeah, I like that. Dark One's Blessing. So, in the design note it says that Dark One's Blessing is now triggered by an enemy dropping to 0 hit points within 5 feet of you. So how it read before, starting at 1st level, when you reduce a hostile creature to 0 hit points, you gain temporary hit points equal to your Charisma modifier plus your Warlock level. Now it reads thus. When you reduce an enemy to 0 hit points, or an enemy drops to 0 hit points within 5 feet of you, which don't think that was explicitly stated, that's one of the changes they've made, you gain temporary hit points equal to your spellcasting modifier plus your Warlock level. Okay, so all they've done is made it so that basically if you reduce somebody whilst in melee, rather than just generally, so they've nerfed that a bit. I'm not sure I understand why, because actually it comes in at 3rd level now rather than 1st. I'm not really sure on the design choice there. An interesting one. Fine. I don't think I agree with it though. I think that's just nerfing for the sake of nerfing, I think. Okay. Dark One's Own Luck. So the design note for this. Dark One's Own Luck can now be used a number of times equal to your spellcasting ability modifier rather than only once per rest. Okay, that's cool. So they've given you giving you some new toys, new toys to play with, but you can play with play with it more times. Okay, so it used to read thusly: starting at 6th level, you can call on your patron to alter fate in your favor. When you make an ability check or saving throw, you can use this feature to add a d10 to your roll. You can do so after seeing the initial roll, but before any of the roll's effects occur. Once you use this feature, you can't use it again until you finish a short or long rest. Well, that's kind of the part that's changed. Now it reads this: when you make an ability check or saving throw, you use this feature to add a d10 to your roll. You can do so after seeing the initial roll, but before any of the roll's effects occur, so that's the same. You can use this feature a number of times equal to your spellcasting ability modifier, minimum of once, and you regain all uses when you finish a long rest. So that's it. It's just simply the resting and the amount of times that you can do it that changes. Because it was finish a short or long rest. Now it is a long rest specifically as well. So you get it back less frequently. They seem to have got rid of most of the short rest mechanics related to the Warlock, I've noticed, which may not necessarily be a bad thing. And I think that's about just not encouraging players to do too many short rests. Because if you've got a Warlock in the party, the Warlock's going to be like, let's take a short rest now. And then that's an hour of in-universe time gone, just so that the Warlock can gather its powers, which can slow the game down a bit, to be honest. If you like to be immersive, like I do, we don't just kind of go, yep, that's it, you got your short rest now. We kind of try and roleplay a short rest out a little bit to try and make it more immersive. But with a Warlock in the party, that can really slow things down. So I kind of like the fact that they're moving away from that for the Warlock a little bit. Fiendish Resilience. The design note for this is no longer bypassed by magical silvered weapons, which monsters almost never possess. Okay, well then why take it out? I don't understand. I mean, sure, but if monsters hardly ever possess it, then it's not a big deal. I suppose it makes it harder to remember, though, if it's never actually a factor, I guess. So, simplifying again. Fiendish Resilience. Circa 2014. Starting at 10th level, you can choose one damage type when you finish a short or long rest. You gain resistance to that damage type until you choose a different one with this feature. Damage from magical weapons or silver weapons ignore this resistance. Now it reads thus: channeling the preternatural resilience of fiends, you can choose one damage type other than force. That's cheeky. Whenever you finish a short or long rest, you gain resistance to that damage type until you choose a different one with this feature. Yeah, that's interesting. So you could pick a damage type of any type that you like, but in Mordenkainen's... no, not Mordenkainen's... Monsters of the Multiverse, that's it. Mordenkainen presents Monsters of the Multiverse. They updated so many monsters to do force damage. So they've kind of gone, yeah, you can anything, but we've got so many monsters now that force damage that we're not going to allow you to do that. That feels a little bit cheeky from them, from my perspective. As a DM, I kind of like it in a way, because it's kind of like, yeah. Kind of like, yeah, you have all of these toys, but I got force damage. I kind of like that from a DM's perspective. But man, from a player's perspective, that's mean. That's a dick move from Wizards of the Coast there. Interesting. Alright, and then 14th level, Hurl Through Hell. Hurl Through Hell can now be used again if you expend a spell slot of at least 4th level. The feature also now includes a saving throw for the target. So, circa 2014, Hurl Through Hell. Starting at 14th level, when you hit a creature with an attack, you can use this feature to instantly transport the target through the lower planes. The creature disappears and hurtles through a nightmare landscape. At the end of your next turn, the target returns to the space it previously occupied, or the nearest unoccupied space. If the target is not a fiend, it takes 10d10 psychic damage as it reels from its horrific experience. Once you use this feature, you can't use it again until you finish a long rest. So that was the 2014 version. Now it reads thusly. By the way, I love Hurl Through Hell as a class feature. It's really fun. 14th level, Hurl Through Hell, in the new Unearthed Arcana. When you hit a creature with an attack roll, you can use this feature to instantly transport the target through the lower planes. The creature disappears and hurtles through a nightmare landscape. At the end of your next turn, remains the same. At the end of your next turn, the target returns to the space it previously occupied or the nearest unoccupied space. If the target is not a fiend, it must make a wisdom saving throw. That's the new bit. It didn't take it, just took the damage. Wisdom saving throw against your spell save DC upon its return. On a failed save, the target takes 10d10 psychic damage. On a successful save, it takes half as much damage. As a dungeon master, I like they've done this. Once you use this feature, you can't use it again until you finish a long rest, unless you expend a spell slot of at least 4th level when you use it again. You can use this feature only once per turn. So they're like, okay, you can use it more than once, but it's going to cost you. You get it once for free, and then it's going to cost you a resource to do it again. Which, to be fair, a 4th level spell slot, at 14th level, you've got 3 of them for 10d10 psychic damage. I'd do that. Sure. But I like the fact that they have kind of given the creature a save. Because you know how players are like, yeah, well, I don't like when I don't get to save. I don't like when it's just like, yep, yeah, take a fuck ton of damage. The fact that that's kind of been then put in the DM's pocket for this, they've nerfed it such in a way that would normally be applicable to players and players would applaud it, but it's the other side now. Part of me likes it because I get frustrated with the playtest stuff because I'm like, we suspect that there are 50 players to every dungeon master. Statistically speaking, those are the numbers that I'm hearing through the grapevine. So all of the playtest material is going to be skewed towards player preference. So I like the fact that they are thinking about the dungeon masters a little bit more, and maybe they're trying to compensate perhaps in their own design choices. So that was it then. So that was the Fiend patron. So final thoughts on the Warlock. They've made the Warlock less complicated, which I like. Which makes me sound like a hypocrite because a lot of the changes that they've made in order to make the Warlock less complicated is they've stripped away some of the flavour that separates it out from the Sorcerer and the Wizard. And the Warlock is somewhat wizard-like. But those invocations then do keep that little bit of flavour that perhaps the Sorcerer wouldn't have. And also its power level in terms of spells known in terms of spell slots and things is perhaps less on the surface. But actually, when you consider all of the things that the Warlock always has prepared through these various features, it kind of balances out. But it's done in a flavorful way. So it's not just, I have magic coursing through my veins like the Sorcerer, and is more kind of linked to the patron. I really don't like the Pact Boon thing. I really don't like it. I think, is the new playtest... I can't remember whether the new playtest is actually includes the Warlock. I'm going to have a quick look whilst I'm on here. Player's Handbook Test 6 includes... who is it? What's inside? No, it's not got the Warlock in it. So this is the most up-to-date Warlock we have. And I really despise the Pact Boon thing. That, to me, is the most egregious thing that they've done here. I also don't like all of these invocations that they've got rid of in order to stick it into Mystic Arcanum. Mystic Arcanum, yes, whilst flexible. Is it's like, do we have to lose all of these other... I'd like to know what the design... intent was behind replacing them all with Mystic Arcanum. I'm guessing it's just, well, Mystic Arcanum covers some of those things, so it would just be a repeat thing. You may as well have the Mystic Arcanum, but it sounds less interesting to me. So yeah, I mean, we'll see. I just hate the Pact Boon thing. It just doesn't make any sense to me how you would choose who your patron is, choose where they come from, choose their origin, but then choose a different patron warlock subclass. So, like, for example, if I'm like, I'm going to have the Pact Boon of the chain, and I just want to have a Fae from the Feywild, who is so-and-so, because I get to choose exactly who it is, the identity of them, and then it's like, but I also would like to play a Fiend Warlock. It's like, the two, it's just so easy for things to not match up, that it's going to create a nightmare, I think, for the Dungeon Masters, and it's not cohesive narratively. I'm sure there are people that will correct me and be like, oh, well, you could justify it with this and you could justify it with that. But I really don't like it. I like my things to make sense from a narrative perspective, and it almost feels as though they've gone, the narrative doesn't matter because this works mechanically. And frankly, that's not what I come to Dungeons and Dragons for. I like these things to make a lot of sense narratively, and for the mechanics to feed the narrative. I don't want the mechanics to contradict my narrative, because then we get into a real messy place, and at that point the narrative is no longer important, and in which case, what are we even doing here if we're not going to have the mechanics match the narrative? There's just too much room for contradiction there. I really, really dislike this. I understand. I think they are moving away, to be fair, from unifying the subclass progression and everybody getting their subclass at 3rd level. I think it's created too many narrative problems like this, and I'm pretty sure playtest packet 6, they have said no. We're going to move the level progression changes back, so subclasses are going to be picked at the same level that they were before. But they haven't updated the Warlock yet, so that might not be the case for the Warlock. I hope it is, that they're going to move it back to 1st level, because this is a bloody mess. That being said, the other changes that they've made, the mechanical changes that they've made, I do like it. I like the Contact Other Planes spell that they've thrown in, and some of the other bits and pieces, like some of the extra spells, like the Book of Shadows spell. Really like that. There's a lot to love in the Warlock update, but it's overshadowed to me by just lack of cohesion on the narrative side, which for me as a dungeon master is more important than the character options, personally. So that's going to be it today. Just before I go, though, I do want to just do a cheeky little plug. Next Wednesday, a week on Wednesday, 19th of July, I am launching Dragons of Stormwreck Isle pay-to-play game, which I'm running on our private Discord server. If you head on over to bardicquest.com/Stormwreck, it will take you to the startplaying.games website where the listing is. We currently have a player signed up. We need another one to get the game up and running. So if you are free Wednesday evenings UK time and need to scratch that Dungeons and Dragons itch, then I would recommend signing up. This is a shorter adventure. It's a starter adventure, so if you are new to Dungeons and Dragons, which, to be fair, if you're listening to this video, you're probably not, but if you are, if you're new to D&D and you want to dive in, then this is a great adventure for learning how to play as well. So yes, bardicquest.com/Stormwreck. There's this magic-fueled island in which dragons have known to roam and battle each other, and the kind of residual chaos that has been created by dragon battles of the past is a lot of the focus of this adventure. So yes, it's a shorter adventure. It will probably take maybe a month or two for us to get through, I would have thought would be my estimate. But as with all things Dungeons and Dragons, it's difficult to predict precisely. So if you fancy joining up, bardicquest.com/Stormwreck, where you can find all of the details, and that will be Wednesday nights, 7 p.m. UK time. So, thank you again for tuning in for this episode of Arcana Unearthed. For everybody that's popped in live, I've seen a few people popping in and out. For those that have popped in and stuck around, thank you very much. For those who are watching through the time-travelling abilities of the internet, thank you also very much for tuning in. I am very, very grateful. Do leave a comment. Let us know what you think of the Warlock. Let me know if I'm being too harsh as well on the Pact Boon things, and how that links into the subclasses. I'd like to know your opinions, because I do skew definitely towards the flavour rather than necessarily the mechanics, as is my prerogative as a Dungeon Master and a forever DM. So that's it from me. Thank you very much, and I will catch you. I'm not sure if I'm going to do it Wednesday or Friday this week. Wednesday was a little bit tight last week, and I didn't manage to fit it in, so it'll probably be Friday morning, I would have thought, if I'm going to do another one this week. But in the meantime, keep an eye out on our YouTube channel and our social media channels, and hit that subscribe button and the bell, and you'll get notifications when we schedule the next live stream, which I hope will be later this week. So thank you very much again for tuning in, and I will catch you next time.